Before I call the meeting to order, I'd like to read this regarding the Southborough School Committee open meeting tonight, Wednesday, February 10th, 2021. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Southborough School Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirements to attend this meeting can be found on the district website at the URL that's in the posting. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen or watch the meeting may do so in the following manner: SAM Government Channel, Verizon Channel 37, Charter Channel 192. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the district website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. So that said, I'd like to call the meeting of the open meeting of the Southborough School Committee to order Wednesday, February 10th, 2021. The time is 6:34, and we have the full committee attending the meeting. First on the agenda is audience sharing. I'm trying to see if I can see out there. Is there anyone that is looking to share, at least before the meeting? We have another audience sharing after the meeting. Seeing none, I would like to start with new business and turn this over to Superintendent Martineau.
Thank you. So the first update is really around the FY22 budget process. So on late January, Governor Baker released his proposed budget, which really begins the budget process for the state. And it also gives us an indication of what we can expect for Chapter 70 funding and other potential funding resources. So at this point in time, it looks like that there were no surprises in terms of the governor's budget, and actually the projections that Becky Pellegrin on our finance team used were very accurate. And this is just the start of the budget process at the state level. So we will keep you updated as the budget process unfolds. The one area that we were looking at was the Student Opportunity Act. And it sounds like there is some movement on trying to fund the Student Opportunity Act. As you may recall, that was voted into law in the fall of 2020. And I think it basically will support school district budget in a variety of ways. But in Southborough, it really will help support the reimbursement for out-of-district transportation for our students who require out-of-district placements. So we're waiting for more information, but again, that could positively impact the transportation line on our operational budget that's being proposed. So that is my legislative update. I'll also add one more update, and that is a letter that on behalf of the school committee, I believe Roger submitted it, either Chairman Keith LaBelle of Northborough or Chairwoman Joan Frank or Chairman Challen submitted a letter to Governor Baker making it a priority for teachers to be vaccinated. So they had been, educators had been moved down on the vaccination list. And there's been some communications and some advocacy to make sure that teachers are considered frontline workers and are vaccinated as soon as possible. So that letter was submitted to Governor Baker, I believe last week. So next on the agenda, we have our annual English learners presentation. Rhoda Webb, our English Director of English Language Education and Equity, will be sharing her annual report. And Rhoda, I will turn it over to you for your presentation.
Thank you. May I share the screen? Thank you. Whoops, that's the wrong. All right, can you see my screen?
We can.
Thank you. So good evening. It is a pleasure to be with you this year to give the annual report of our English learners. The program is the English Learner Education Program, and I'm happy to report the data for this current year. The legislation is plentiful behind the English Learner Program. They're both federal regulations, mostly built on civil rights cases and state laws. I've listed a few that can be found on the Department of Education's website. As you know, the English Learner Program is considered regular education, and there's no shortage of guidance that we need to put in place in our district, and which is in place. What is new to the website is a Massachusetts blueprint for English learner success, and also a dashboard with a lot of data. It is based on last year's information, which was reported to you last year, but still it is a very nice a place to go and look up information, but again, based on last year. So to refresh the definition, which is, this is a state law definition of an English learner, is a student whose first language is not English and who is currently not able to perform ordinary classwork in English. Of course, it's a lot more involved than this, and there is a process into learning any language. It starts as part of, in the Commonwealth, all families, when they register in a school district, need to complete a home language survey. And from the home language survey, if an additional language is spoken in the home or a language other than English, then what we do in our district is spend about an hour talking with families because we realize that the family knows the child the best. And what we want to make sure is that we're starting a relationship of trust with families. We have wonderful families in our district. We speak to far more families than those who have children who qualify as English learners. But it is wonderful to get to know how a family uses languages in the homes, how that language has developed over time. We ask the families to share with us what cultural values are important to them. If they have community support, for example, where they, if they have other family members, if they've had to move a lot, if they're probably living in our towns and they have no family with them, we are able to connect families who speak similar languages or share their cultures. And it's a way also to network. But we also find out most of our families come from other areas of the United States or from other parts of the world. So we really want to know the nuances and what makes every family unique. And that's why we spend this time. We do not go making assumptions. Having moved here with my family with very young children, I know that I shared what made my children, you know, what was hard for them adjusting to life here. We look at the acculturation process of every family. There's language loss that happens when children start acquiring a second language. So based on research, we do provide each family also, if it is their choice to maintain their children speaking the home language, We do provide them with research coming from Head Start of the importance of maintaining a language as a second language is added or a second language is developed, or sometimes it's a third language, and the importance to maintain the home culture. As the children become acculturated to society here, and obviously we also look at the pathway and the journey that families are on, the adults, which sometimes looks a little bit different for the pathway that the children are going to be starting as they come into our school system. Our families also have a lot to offer us in the sense of the experiences that they come with from wherever their point of entry is. Part of the Commonwealth and part of the Department of Education, it is a requirement to administer a language proficiency screener. This is no different than doing a math screener for children or literacy screener. And there are two different models that we use. What is called the pre-LAS is for preschool, which I'll be addressing a little bit later. And for kindergarten through grade 12, we use the suite of WIDA screeners that the department asks us to implement. From that, we determine if a student's language proficiency in English, that is looking at the 4 domains, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, according to the results of that, a child would either qualify as an English learner or not. And in our district, as we've reported before, there are 2 components to the model that we use in our district, which is sheltered English immersion. You have heard me report on the retail initiative. At this point, our teachers are SEI endorsed, which is sheltered English immersion. That was a graduate level course for teachers who work with English learners, and that's from a level 3 and above. So, of course, in working with students that have a diversity of cultures and languages, it is very important to know for the classroom teacher and subject teacher, the sheltered content instruction means how to shelter instruction, not water it down, but how to shelter it according to language proficiency. And again, that's from an intermediate level above, and I'm referring to the students. But then another component, which is core, and it is a requirement for English learners, is to have English as a second language instruction, or what we call English language development in our district, taught by ESL licensed teachers. And it is instruction that it is delivered in a systematic, explicit, and sustained way. And it is based on the model ESL curriculum units. We've written our own units as well, which continually are updated, as well as, and they're content-based. So they are linked to the Massachusetts frameworks as well. So there's a certain amount of time that our English learners receive ESL instruction. And of course, there is deep collaboration between classroom subject teachers and our ELD teachers. It's everybody working together. This doesn't function in a vacuum. It is a collaborative process with everybody involved. If we look at the rate of growth over the years, we've been looking at our growth, which started in Southborough in 2004 with 11 English learners. This year, we have 82 English learners in Southborough. We haven't seen as many families move in, and I think partly due to the pandemic that we're living in. But out of all the students tested this year for language proficiency, 46 qualified as English learners. So it's not that there's only 2 more students compared to last year. This is a fluid process in which students qualify as English learners according to the language proficiency screener, but also students are reclassified every year. So the dark blue bar are the current English learners in our district, and the pale blue bar are the former English learners in our district. And from those 34, and I remember There was a question last year, like how do we know who those students are? We have to monitor our English learners for 4 years. And our English language development teachers do that. And that means to ensure that when we reclassify a student, that student will continue to make progress academically every year. If not, we requalify the child into the program. So out of those 34 students, 5 are in their first year of monitoring, 16 in their second year, 9 in their third year, and 4 in their fourth year, which means that next year we will not be monitoring them. And of course, students have moved on to Algonquin, so this number will vary from year to year. The other thing that we take a look at is, of course, this is a snapshot in time, and it was frozen at the end of the calendar year in December to analyze it. So we have approximately 40% at the foundational level. That means students coming in not speaking English or at the word level, to a low developing, which is very in simple speaking and writing in simple sentences. And then we have 60% of the students in the transitional level. And that means from writing those simple sentences to now more complex compound sentences. And this is in the 4 language domains: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And according to the language proficiency level is the amount of English language development instruction the students receive. As regards languages in our district, to the left are the languages of last year, and to the right are this year's languages. So this is for students who are considered English learners and for students whom we've reclassified. These are not all the students, all the languages of the students in Southborough. There are more languages than these. So within the students that are considered English learners or former English learners, the prevalent language is Chinese, followed by Portuguese, Russian, and Arabic. And then you can see the total of 22 languages that we have, which provides a language is not in a vacuum. A language is tied to culture. It is tied to values, to different things that families bring with them. Most of our families, most of the cultures that these languages represent are more community collectivist families versus a Northern European or the United States is known more as an individualistic culture. So those are things that we take a look at when we're talking to our families and what we are learning about in everything that we are teaching with culturally responsive teaching. As regards English learners, it is not a homogeneous group. The department has given guidance on certain qualities, or not qualities, characteristics. For example, a newcomer is a student who is entering our district not speaking English. Usually it's between the first 6 to a year is what is called a newcomer student. We have the intersection of English learners with disabilities, and in our district there is, we've done a lot of professional development, and the relationship with our student support teams and understanding and trying to tease out, and we spend a lot of time in looking at the multiple factors that can influence a child in not learning a language as quickly as might be expected. So we take a look at it very much in depth, the different characteristics of each student. So that's a very collaborative process. And there's definitely an intersection with student support services. The long-term English learner is a student who's in the program for more than 6 years, usually 7 years. And again, a child with a disability might take a lot longer for us to be able to reclassify according to the department's reclassification criteria. And SLIFE, or student with limited or interrupted former education, is also another student that we might receive in our district. And that means that they have not been attending school there are various reasons why students either in their home country or due to mobility or many different factors have not been in school for several months or several years. So the programming has to be adjusted to the reality that the child has lived through. And as regards reporting and accountability, of course, English learners receive report cards. They receive regular English language education progress reports, and they're measured in two different ways. Access 2.0 is a summative assessment for language proficiency, which is based on content too. So they're using content areas, which is social studies, science, and math in this assessment to measure their language proficiency. And the window this year was expanded due to the pandemic. So it opened up in January and it'll close on March 20th. Because we've got the different models, but thankfully because we have the hybrid model, and most of our English learners are in school either 2 or 4 days a week, we are able to assess them in person. There are a few families that are coming on Mondays to bring their students when there are very few students in the building. But for this year, this window has been expanded to give plenty of opportunity for districts to be able to administer the test. There is a criteria by which when a student reaches an overall score and a literacy score, that we're able to contemplate or look at data. We're not contemplating, we're looking at data, both our internal data, classroom teacher input, ELD input, their reading scores, their writing samples, in order to reclassify a student from the program. And of course, our English learners also take MCAS on a yearly basis. And as regards some highlights of the program, we do consider our families coming from all parts of the United States, all parts of the world. Some are first generation, second generation. Every family is unique, so we take great pride in the time that we put into getting to know our families and the partnership that we have our families. We provide interpreters and translators for families who need that, because it's very important for everyone to be involved in their child's education. This year, we will be establishing an English learner parent advisory council. And yesterday and today, there was a convening session by the Department of Education, and they got great training models. So I'll be able to report on that next year. The International Night, which last year we had to cancel, but that's coming together in a very relaxed social environment, with families bring their grandparents and any family member that they would wish, and they bring a dish that they enjoy sharing with us. And it's just a very relaxed evening to get to know one another. Every summer, we have provided an enrichment program for our grade 1 through 12 students. We build community among all our children in Northborough, Southborough, and Algonquin. It is funded by the Title III grant, which is it is a supplemental grant for English learners. In 2012, we partnered with Julie Doyle and introduced WPI's Scratch Junior and Scratch programs. And the theme was, we all have a story to tell. And the photo that you see here, which just brings a lot of smiles, was a visit to WPI, to the robotics. Every year we try and take our students to a campus, realizing that for many families, sometimes it's going to be the first time that their child will go to college. So it's for children from grade 1 to start feeling comfortable and getting to know what a campus is, and visiting a couple of years ago, the students sat in the cafeteria, they sat inside classrooms, they visited a dorm. So all those things are very unique to the United States. And we want our children to start becoming acquainted with that. So that's not a current photo. That is, we're hoping that this summer we are able to have our enrichment program once again. What happened in August of 2020 is, instead of having a virtual summer program, our ELD teachers, we reached out for 2 weeks to all our families to make sure that our families were aware of how we were reopening schools, the different models, the health and safety protocols that have been put in place. And in working with Marielle and Duggan, documents were translated into Spanish, Portuguese, and Arabic. So we made sure that every family in our schools was aware of how school was opening, and that they felt comfortable and had the knowledge that was needed to start this school year. So thank you for the opportunity to be able to share with you tonight.
You ready for questions, Rhoda?
I am.
Okay. Well, the first, just a comments. I continue to be greatly impressed by how comprehensive and how rich this program is, and frankly, how many different languages we support. So, I think it's just great. I have a very quick question. You don't have to go back to this slide, but regarding the Access 2.0, that window's from January 7th to May 20th, correct?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to confirm that. I also notice on the chart, which identifies the number of different languages, and I realize when you get, and it's, by highest to lowest as far as number of students that we're dealing with. And when you get to the lowest, there's a lot of singular, one student, appears in a number of different languages. I notice it dropped off by a couple of languages, I think. I don't remember whether it was 25 to 23, 24 to 22, but something like that.
Yes.
I don't recall now, is that unusual to have a drop up? I recall, at least historically, it seems to increase, but not particularly unusual. I mean, it's only a couple, probably. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and it's not that the languages have gone away. It's just that this, the students either have moved on to Algonquin, or so. And again, this is not first language, not English, which is an area to work on, because that's a self-reported category. We have many more languages. I think in looking at last year's the data dashboard, I think there was like 15% of first language, not English. So I'm not reporting on that. But again, that is not too accurate in the district. We have more languages and more quantity of families who speak languages in our district.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I see Katora's hand up. I would like to, again, as I try to remember to do each meeting, if I miss a hand and the presenter happens to notice it, feel free to call on someone. But I do see Katora's hand up.
Yeah, so thank you so much for that, Rhoda. I always look forward to this presentation. I feel like seeing the list of languages is so impressive, and it's really just wonderful how diverse our school community is. What I was wondering is how would you say the circumstances of this academic year so far have maybe affected the progress of the students sort of moving from that introductory or that foundational stage to the later stages?
Yes. So it's going to be very interesting to see the results of the access test, because it's not going to be a valid, for some students, the learning remotely has worked for them, but for students who are at the beginning stages of learning the language, it doesn't. You really need to be, and you have to, so it's going to be very interesting. This is the year that will never end, the assessment, because the window's so long. But of course, that's just a point in time. So we're mindful of that. And we'll put in all the, what we need to so that the students can keep progressing. As long as a child has kept learning their home language, we're fine. If the child has not progressed in any language, then that is more of a concern. So we will tell with time. And it's wonderful, that we are able to have students in person in our schools, because that affects the children too. So this is a difficult year.
Yeah, that's interesting about learning the home language. I didn't realize that, but that makes total sense to make progress in that area as well. So, yeah. All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I guess we'll go back to you, Greg.
Yeah, so I just
Thank you, Rhoda, again.
You're welcome.
Thank Rhoda and her leadership. And our ELD teachers do an amazing job supporting families. And Rhoda, I was just hoping you could also speak really briefly around the Seal of Biliteracy and kind of the initiative of, celebrating, bilingual, multilingual families or languages and students who can speak more than one language. And also kind of the asset model that we have in the way we think about languages in our district.
Yes. So the wonderful news, last year we were not able to implement the Seal of Biliteracy because of the closure now this is at the high school level, right? But this year, the wonderful thing is that it's going to be offered to seniors. Again, it has not been a normal trajectory. But the wonderful news is that there are seniors who are going to be able to, it's by choice, right? We were going to ask, it was going to be offered to many other students, but given the pandemic and knowing that languages are an asset, knowing that we live in a multilingual world, so adding languages is very important. That's why our message is always for families to try not to lose the language, that they're able to offer the child for family reasons and to stay connected to their communities. The Algonquin is offering the Seal of Biliteracy this year. That is a wonderful thing that it is moving forward. We're not going to be assessing at 8th grade level. It doesn't make sense given the pandemic this year, but it is moving forward at the high school. The seal can only be given at the high school level. So we're moving forward with that.
Thank you, Rhoda.
You're welcome.
I just point out too, although the seal is awarded at the high school level, the work really starts at the elementary level, the middle school level, and progresses and culminates in the seal being awarded at the high school level, but really it starts much sooner than that. And basically the seal is a signal to for employers or colleges that a student has attained bilingual or multilingual status, and that's an asset, either whether in employment or through acceptance in a college. So it's something that we've been working on for several years now, and Rhoda's done a great job leading that effort. All right, thank you, Rhoda.
You're welcome.
I guess I will ask you to continue, Rhoda, with a brief update from the Coalition for Equity. I'll just also note that at our March combined meeting, we'll be presenting a much more in-depth summary of the work and thinking of the Coalition for Equity. So that will be a more in-depth presentation at that time.
So since our last meeting, the Coalition of Equity has met in January. In the December meeting, we had mentioned that there was going to be 3 working groups that were going to be starting. The Community Partnership, Curriculum and Instruction, and Policy Handbooks, Procedures and Practices group. Each of those groups has met once. And tomorrow, in fact, we have another coalition meeting. So the subgroups report to the whole coalition group on the work that they are focusing on. So the goal of the coalition, just as a refresher, is to build community partnerships focused on equity issues in our districts and create conditions for courageous conversations to support collaborative learning about inequality and identify and develop resources to support learning and action. It is a group of 33 members. So Kamali is on the group, like we said last time. Greg, Stephanie, and Marie, Clayton. Am I missing any? Kathleen, and parents and students. Keith as well. And so we are looking at different ways to advise and support the district and how it intersects with the work that is currently happening in the district.
So I'll just share that the exciting aspect of the group is just the diverse perspectives and backgrounds of the members of the coalition. And there's a lot of expertise that people are bringing to the conversations and discussions, a lot of great ideas. And I will add there are students on the coalition, which they are true advocates for this work, which is really exciting. They have a lot of wonderful ideas and really are eager to kind of move this work forward. And I'll just also note that Mary Ellen Duggan is also on the coalition, but at the March presentation, we'll make sure everyone is acknowledged membership. All right. So next on the agenda is just a brief technology staffing update. And the last meeting, the Southborough School Committee met, we were discussing the hiring of a Chief Information Officer or Chief Information Security Officer. So we have begun the process. And this evening, I'm thrilled to share that we have we've hired a person, Maurice Myrie. He signed his contract earlier this week. So Maurice has served as the Director of Information Technology and Information Security Officer for the Worcester County Sheriff's Office for several years. He was a very impressive candidate and rose to the top of the committee's selection very quickly. And he was unanimously selected to offer the position. And again, I'm thrilled to announce that he has officially signed his contract, and he will begin his work March 15th. And I will be inviting Maurice to join our combined meeting in March for a formal introduction and a little more information about his background. But I'd also like to ask Heather if you would just kind of share a little bit about the process and the folks who are involved in the selection and interview committees.
I'd be happy to, thank you. So back in December, we advertised for this position, and we advertised in multiple sources externally, and we had 18 applicants, 18 qualified applicants. I was pleased with the number of, not necessarily the number, but the quality of applicants that we had. So on January 14th, the search committee met and we screened the candidates, and we established some skills and traits that we would like to see in a new leader in this role. And of course, technical skills were essential, but there were other skills that we were looking for, such as experience with managing people, budget experience, somebody who's a trust builder, an effective listener and forward thinking, and somebody who has a proven experience as an effective leader. So those were some of the things that the committee was looking for. The committee consisted of Keith Lavoie, our Director of Operations, Julie Doyle, Director of Instructional Learning, Sean Bevan, our high school principal, Andy Mariotti, the technology manager, and Lorraine Wolfrey, who is the data specialist, and then myself. So we held interviews on January 25th and 26th and met with some very interesting and talented candidates. And 2 semifinalists were put forward to meet with the superintendent and a small subcommittee. And from there, the finalist was then Superintendent Martineau, and I then met with the finalist. And at that point, references were checked, and then an offer was made.
So again, at the March combined meeting, we'll have a formal introduction to Maurice, and we are very excited for him to join our central office leadership team. So more information to follow in the next few weeks. And I just want to thank the interview committee and the time Heather took and detail she took to make sure the process was thorough and we hired the best candidate possible. And so thank you, Heather.
I would also, if I might, before we move on to the next topic, I would also like to thank Heather. An effort like this is not an easy one. In my full-time job, or what used to be my full-time job, it's now become my part-time job this year. We deal with a lot of IT issues, and the importance of capable people in that area cannot be understated, and it's not easy to find them. So Heather, it sounds like you did a great job on this. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to welcoming Maurice in the combined meeting next month.
Thank you.
I muted myself. I have that habit. I see Kamali's hand up.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say congratulations on finding a good candidate for this role, and just looking forward to, that person, Mr. Maurice, is going to have impact on the whole school system and our kids' education. So I'm looking forward to meeting him in our next meeting.
Thank you.
All right, Greg, let's see. It looks like we have a grant to approve. So do you want to, the agenda item describes it as it's an anonymous donation in the amount of $250 for students that have outstanding food services balances, certainly worthy. Is there anything anyone in the district can add to this before we take a vote on this, or discuss it and then take a vote on it?
No, just to extend a thank you to the anonymous donor. It was a very generous donation and very well needed, and it's going to a great cause to support our families in our district. And Keith, I'm not sure if you have anything to add about the donation.
I know it's going to be extremely helpful. I think the anonymousness of it, we want to protect it as best we can, but I know it is going to go to very good use.
Well, again, I would also like to thank the donor. Any committee members have an additional comment? Seeing no hands up, I would entertain a motion to approve an anonymous donation in the amount of $250 for students that have outstanding food services balances.
I'll make that motion and also combine it with a comment, if that's okay. I had my physical hand up. I wasn't fast enough with the button. Just to send another thank you out there to the kind person who's doing this. It's very, very thoughtful, and I'm sure it will be much appreciated, and really a very generous thing to do. So, so moved, and along with a thank you.
Seconded by Kamali, and absolutely much appreciated. And it just goes to underscore that no matter where you are going to school throughout the country, something like this can be helpful to anyone.
I would agree with that 100%. I wish I could tell the story. It's a good one, but I couldn't agree with you more, Kamali.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I don't see any other hands. So it's moved by Katura, seconded by Kamali. It's a roll call vote. Katura,
Yes.
Kamali,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes, and thank you to the donor.
Jennifer,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So it is accepted unanimously.
Roger, you're muted.
Oh, well, I do that all the time. We're now moving on to old business, COVID-19 update. Thank you. Tura?
Sure. So thank you. Just to update on some of the work that we're doing around screening of COVID-19. Mary Ellen Duggan and the medical advisory team and Mary Ellen's, the nurses have done an outstanding job creating opportunities for faculty and staff to participate in COVID-19 testing. And we have shifted to a screening program, and I will have Mary Ellen just share some of the updates for the committee.
Hi, everybody. Last week, we went from our weekly individual PCR screening to a pooled screening for the staff, and it went well. We screened about 700 people, which was a little bit less than we typically do. But along with the pooled screening, we had no positive pools. That's the best news out of that. But that was all 10 schools. But we also, to make our program more complete, we offer testing, which would be for symptomatic or quarantined staff and students on Fridays. So we do not want people who are symptomatic or quarantined to partake in the pool testing. So we are offering individual diagnostic testing for them that would be sent off to the lab individually, not as part of the pool. So we started that last week also, and that went well. And we kept positive people out of our pools, so that's good. We are rolling this out with 4 pilot elementary schools tomorrow with the students at Woodward and Neary in Southborough, and Lincoln Street and Proctor in Northborough. We have had a great turnout. This was really happened fast. The turnaround was quickly because we wanted to get some done. We wanted to get the kids on board before break. So we have 117 students participating at Neary and 115 at Woodward. So that's exciting news, and we'll see. I'll update you next time about how it really went. So I'm hoping it goes well so that we can, after break, we can add more schools in. And by March 5th, our goal is to have 100% of this available to all the schools, all the students who want to take part in it. And Greg, did you want to share the dashboard real quick, and we'll do that, and then I'll take questions?
Sure, just give me 1 second.
So this is our latest dashboard. It's updated every Sunday. We have added a few sections here. Each week it gets a little bit more robust. Might be down to like 4 pages. After this week, we're going to add some more. So as you can see, the staff screening and testing numbers are there. This week, what we've done this week, what we did this week, and what we did for screening and testing, and then it would be the total screening and testings and the totals for that we've done all along, what we've would have come from the test. And then we add the students in. We did not do any screening for students last week. We did do 10 tests. And then the total that we've done since we implemented this in December for the students. And then the rest of the dashboard is pretty much the same. What's been going on throughout the district, the numbers that we have, the positive numbers, as you can see, it's trending down. Hopefully it will continue to go that way. With February break next week, we'll keep our fingers crossed that it continues to trend down. And then it goes to our what's happening with quarantines throughout, and this is health office data that the nurses track this. When students are quarantined, when they can return, if they're symptomatic or a close contact. So all of those things are tracked daily. That's a big part of their job, is to keep track of everybody and do that contact tracing. So that is updated. We are planning to add some more to that this week, which would show the number of students. The SARP students are not included in our totals there, and I think that's an important thing to have, like the number of SARP students who have tested positive, and it might be a separate column. I haven't really decided how to put that on there. And then if there was any in-school transmission, I think that's important for people to know, because if it's part of your school, you know, but if it's not part of your school, you probably don't really have an idea of what's going on. You don't have a big picture. So we will be adding some more information to that dashboard.
Ready for questions?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Well, it looks like our committee is unanimous in that everyone has a question. So it looks like Katora is at the top with her hand up.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I think that I said this before, but I think this whole testing and screening is very exciting, and obviously one of the things that will hopefully allow us to do more in-person time. I was just wondering, because I think that the goal, or ideally we would want to have 80%, was it, participation at each school, and I wasn't sure what these numbers, 117 at Neary and 115 at Woodward, what that represents at this point in time, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there was an initial express your interest form, and then there was a follow-up where everybody had to actually sign up. And so I'm wondering, is this how many people have actually signed up and are getting kits this week and are doing it, and what percentage of the student population is that?
So I can tell you that this is the actual people who are receiving kits this week.
Okay.
There was some confusion. You know, this is the things we find out with the pilot, having an interest form. The same thing happened with the teachers, we should have learned, but we really wanted to see if the interest was there for people at first before we really jumped in with both feet and committed to the program. So this is the actual people who are receiving kits. And I don't know the percentage of your population. Steve, what's 115 of yours, or Kathleen, 117 of yours?
Actually, I can do the math. I have the enrollment.
It's a little less than 50%.
Okay.
Yeah, a little same.
50%.
And
Okay.
that includes all students. Those numbers include students that are in SARP also.
I will share that the remote day yesterday did not help with distributing kits, because families had to pick the kits up today. So again, it's just one obstacle we had not planned on this week.
I think when we started out with staff, we only had about 50% too, the first week that we did staff. So we'll see it grow hopefully as we continue, and it gets to be more of a regular routine part of. The first week was, even with staff, to get that first kit out, and you have to collect the consents and do all of that. But after that, it's smooth sailing.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. I picked up our kits today. So thank you.
Jess?
That was my question. So
Oh, okay. You disappeared from the
Yep.
hand up. All right. Looks like Jen's up.
I also had that question, but I also had a second part to that. Has anyone given you feedback on if they didn't want testing and why? And then I'm wondering, as we consider moving to more in-person days, are there any, I mean, I guess we can't require people to be part of a testing program, but are there any ways in which we can try and increase that percentage, because it still seems relatively low, although I know compared to other places it's not a low percentage, but strategies that we can increase that as we start to move closer to return.
I think it's going to be word of mouth. It's going to be about amongst the parents, we can, or how we can promote it amongst the parents themselves. I know that Dr. Ciarinello put it on Facebook, and I got a lot of questions from that. And it might be just the way we put it out there. Is it best to come from Greg, best to come from me, best to come from the principals? I think the more it's there, the more opportunity people have.
And I just to add on to that, one of the parents, a parent reached out to me asking if there was any way that they could get hard copies of consent forms or something sent home, because they often miss electronic communication. So I said I would bring that up at the meeting. But that's it. Thank you for the information.
Sure. They can contact me and we can figure something out, whatever school they're at, or contact the nurse at the school they're at.
Okay. Kamali?
Yes, I had a question about what is the trigger that moves us from doing the pilot to then the full-blown program? Are there checks that you're doing, Mary Ellen, and the MAT team, or is it the company that they are kind of doing some checks with this pilot group, and then they'll say, okay, this is what we've learned, and now we can move into the full, the broader group?
I think that was just our choice to start it small, and then we'll add as it. We'll be the ones that determine how fast the other schools come on.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jessica?
I just had a thought about increasing participation, because Mary Ellen, you said like word of mouth. I was looking at I think it was in the Thursday pack or something, that like the flyer that went home, and it showed like how the Q-tip doesn't go up that far in the nose, but you had to kind of scroll down to see that. And I was wondering, I don't know if it would be like, because kids like the gross out factor and stuff. Like, what if we had a willing kid do a little video or something showing how easy it is, or if or even if we just showed like a visual like picture further up to show how easy it is. Because I know I was shocked when we had the opportunity to go get tested over Christmas or over the winter holiday, because there were extra tests available. I was shocked it wasn't like the tickle the eyeball test. So people might still really have that in their head, even though we've been trying to get the word out that it's not that,
So never ever would I ever have thought that there would be a video of me swabbing my nose. You signed up for testing, you received that video.
There was a video. Okay.
There was a video. Wasn't of a cute 8 or 9-year-old. It was of me swabbing my nose, talking while I was swabbing and showing everybody how it was done. So
yeah. Maybe everybody.
Someone else could star in it next week if they want. So
yeah, because I think people still don't understand how easy it is.
I think, I think we received a lot of great feedback from families around, although they love my emails, they much prefer emails from principals or their classroom teachers. They tend to read those emails more. So really getting principals to send out the information, also getting teachers to help communicate. And also, to your point, Jessica, just making sure that when we send this email, it stands on its own. So it's just information about testing. It's not embedded with 5 other updates. And the other learning that we've done through other districts is once they've launched, participation has increased rather dramatically. And we saw the same increase of participation with our faculty and staff. And I think, Jennifer, to your earlier question around, why are some parents not wanting or families not wanting to participate? The primary reason really in the beginning when we first surveyed parents was that if it wasn't done on a consistent basis, they didn't really see the value. And then the other was just they wanted to observe, many families wanted to observe the collection. And we're thinking that once we launch this, since it is a take-home test, some of those families will join because they'll be part of the collection process at home.
I have a question. Mary Ellen, just this maybe it should be just a reminder, but regarding the pooling, the testing, now clearly it allows us to leverage, fewer tests fewer tests, I guess, to more people. But what is the delay to find the positives? Is it a day or two? How is that again? Because it's got to be this sort of the second test if you end up with a positive pool. Sounds like you didn't end up with any positives in the pools, but it's going to happen. So
exactly. So since we pool at the lab, our samples are pooled at the lab. If there is a positive pool, they're able to test them right away. Those samples that were in that pool, test them to find out which sample was the positive one. So there will not be much of a delay.
okay.
We got our results this week. So the lab is in Maryland. I shipped them off on Friday afternoon, and we had our results at midnight on Saturday. If there was a positive pool, it might have been a few hours more. I think they said 4 to 6 hours more it might be. So we would have had them by Sunday morning instead.
That's great. So it's only a matter of hours. I was worried that it might be a day or two, but that's great.
No, and there are pools where they're pooled at school where you would have to bring people back in to get tested again, but we're not doing that.
Well, all right. Thank you. Before we leave this, I certainly would like to acknowledge the great work that Mary Ellen and the nursing staff and the medical support team are doing, not only in doing this work, but also communicating it. I think it's so important, for the school community. And I'd just like to shout out a big thank you to all of you.
Thanks, Roger.
I just want to say a here to that. Absolutely. Totally agree.
If we had a vote on this, it would be unanimous, Mary Ellen. Okay, so.
Thanks.
So, and then the last, and I echo the thanks to Mary Ellen and her team of nurses. And it's really been a team effort. Julie Doyle's been involved in helping with the technology, Becky Pellegrino around the procurement process and doing the RFPs, and Keith Lavoie helping set up, the spaces. So it's been a team effort. Rhoda for helping with the translations. So, but the majority of the work and the thank yous go to Mary Ellen and her team. The other COVID-19 update is really around the district's planning for increased in-person learning if the conditions allow. So just kind of an update to the community that tomorrow evening at 6:30 p.m. there will be a joint school committee meeting with Northborough School Committee pre-K through 8 and the Southborough School Committee pre-K through 8 to receive a presentation on the district's plan to increase in-person learning, to talk about some of the medical advisory data, and then to answer any questions. And the evening will end with voting of the recommendation of increasing in-person learning. So again, that is tomorrow evening at 6:30 p.m. and that meeting will be held via Zoom.
Okay, questions on that? Master plan update. Katora, we leave this on the schedule. So you're never going to get off the schedule for a while, but do you have anything for us at this meeting or not?
Not this meeting, but we do
Okay.
have something in the works and should have something to present in March.
Okay, all right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Now, moving on, I think we're going to the superintendent's report, and that starts with enrollments.
Yes, so in your packet is the enrollment report as of February 4th, 2021. And the total enrollment currently is 1,136. And this represents a 4-student increase from the January report. I also would like to speak to last month's demographic study report that was presented by the New England School Development Council. After the presentation, the Capital Planning School Research Committee met and kind of took a closer look at the report and had some further questions for NESDEC around some of the data points. As a result, I've had numerous conversations with NESDEC, and because of the questions that we've asked, we have an updated report that I would like to review with you tonight in terms of the enrollment projections. So I'm going to share my screen. So I'll highlight a couple of the changes that were made after looking more closely at the data presented by NESDEC. The first change really was some of the preschool enrollment numbers. So the preschool enrollment numbers on the report that was presented or given to us as of December 12th or 21st included Northborough preschool numbers, enrollment numbers. So those were removed, and what we see now in the pre-K column are solely pre-K students who are enrolled in the public schools of Southborough. The other significant change was an enrollment projection at the kindergarten level for 21-22. The report that was presented last month projected 168 kindergarten students enrolling for the 21-22 school year. Having conversations with Principal Ryan and really looking more closely at the data, we did not think that was an accurate projection. So having further conversations with NESDEC and their team, what we learned was that there's obviously some algorithms behind these numbers that they're using, and when they chose the algorithm that they used really the ceiling number of potential K enrollments, and what the conversation that I had was that number is really outside of the range of what we were projecting, and it did not seem accurate. So after some additional conversations, they adjusted the algorithm, which decreased the enrollment to what I think is a much more accurate projection. In this projection of 134, still at the ceiling of what we're thinking in terms of enrollment at the K level based on Principal Ryan's analysis. So obviously this has an impact on the overall enrollment projections moving to the outward years. If you look, the enrollment projections go to 2030 to 31. And if you multiply the difference, or if you look at the difference between what was projected, 168 to 134, you have 34 less students in our projection in this report than we had in the original report. And that gets replicated through over the years and grade levels. So when we looked at the report last month in terms of projected percentage changes, when we looked at 2030 to 31 in the enrollment change from the last report, that was 231 students, an increase, which represented a 20.4% increase. With this change in the kindergarten enrollment projections for 21-22, this significantly changed the outward projections and it changes it to a decrease of 43 students enrolled in our pre-K through 8 system, or a negative 3.8% decline over a 10-year period. So this is what it looks like in a bar graph over the next 10 years. And as you can see, there's a slight decrease that we're seeing, but for the most part, enrollment projections are remaining fairly steady, and we're not seeing significant swings or significant variances from year to year. And this will be important when we move through the agenda and actually talk about the capital plan that we are moving forward with. So I will stop sharing and I'd be happy to answer any questions around these data.
I see Jess's hand up.
So this seems odd because the whole premise of the presentation that we got from them was that, if I'm recalling it correctly, it was that we having turnover in the housing industry, and that, or in our housing, and that the boomers are moving out and millennials are moving in and they're having kids and et cetera. Like the whole premise of the presentation was that our town is going to lose the older generation and gain people who are having children. So now a little change in an algorithm totally seems to have blown up that theory. Am I right?
So I think that is accurate. Well, I don't think it, I think basically, so they use, I think a variety of factors in calculating the projections. So it's birth rate, permitting, and real estate sales. And that was emphasized in the presentation. Part of the work that we did is really looking kind of like proof of concept of the numbers. And after looking at that 168 kindergarten number, that seemed like a very high estimate. And we did go through each grade level as well to make sure that those were accurate. So their premise of having 168 kindergartners next year, we do not feel was accurate to what we're actually seeing happen, based on, again, Principal Ryan's projections and what we're seeing for enrollment in kindergarten next year. And therefore, it does have a compounding impact over the years, over the next 10 years, because it's 34 less students year after year, which changes the outward projection.
So are we not each year going to gain any more children in these projections? Any more kindergartners? Like, are we not expecting our town's populate, like,
Jessica, can I comment on that, if you will, Roger and Greg?
well,
So,
wait.
Sorry, Jessica, I think I didn't hear the last part of your question.
Yeah, I got muted by mistake. Are we, so we're not I just, it's making me pause a little bit, because we, that entire presentation seems to be invalid now. And it worries me a little bit, because we're also, they seem very confident in that presentation. And, I'm just wondering, like, okay, so fine, we're not expecting 160 whatever kindergartners next year, but we're not expecting any growth at all?
So I'll just speak to the, so again, we were—
Maybe you can go back to the chart, because
yeah, let me. Give me 1 second.
and then of course we have the concern of Park Central, because that would add children to our system.
So Jessica, and I should have had the old report here, because then you can start to see the impact it has as we look in the outward years.
Is there any way you can zoom this a little bit?
Sure.
Thanks.
Can you see that better now?
Yes, thank you.
So in the January presentation, the 21-22 projection for kindergarten was 168.
Right.
So this was 168. This was 174. And as you move through the presentation, this was 180. So again,
right,
they were building on a foundation that over projected kindergarten based on their analysis and based on birth rate, permitting, and real estate sales. And probably the most accurate data we have, because this is out 1 year, we have good projections based on what we think actual enrollment will be.
So we don't think, so it looks 134 that year and then down to 100.
So then next year we'll have 22, 23, 100, 112, 120. Actually, it's, yeah, so 22, 23, 24, 25. And then 24, 25, we see an uptick.
Can I throw out a comment here, since I've been in various subcommittee meetings having to do with the report that might help shed some light? Roger, is that okay with you?
Molly, is it okay with you?
Oh, is Kamali in line? Oh,
yeah.
Go ahead, Kamali. Go ahead.
It's up to Jessica. She posed the question. So
I think I'm done. Thanks for waiting, Kamali. It just surprises me, just because like that entire presentation was presented to us as our population is going to explode, and now it's like exactly the opposite. So it's just very surprising. So we've kind of done a 180, and I just want to make sure that these people are accurate, that because this is a total 180, and that this is really, really important. Like, we're talking about the futures of our schools here. So I want to make sure that we're relying on accurate data. So
it was a shift, and I think a lot of the same questions around why, and I don't disagree with you. The presentation was centered around birth rate, real estate sales, and permitting, but again, if the foundation is wrong, if that 168 number, if the algorithm they were using was overestimating enrollment, then there is a compounding effect of what our outward projection looks like. I do feel like this is a more accurate representation of what we'll see in 21-22 for preschool, for kindergartners.
Okay, and then if I have more questions, I can wait until other people go later. And then my other concern is Park Central. I don't know if that's how we can factor that in. I mean, do we factor that in at all?
So I think Katora has some ideas of, because it is a potential, right? Even though it's not permitted right now, and I think NASDAQ presented, they don't count projects that are not permitted. It is a potential. So how do we factor in, potential projects? And I think Park Central is a little bit more unique than others.
Okay, so Kamali's up next. I would simply like to mention that I have some comments on this, which may help. but I'm going to reserve those until Kamali and Katura have their questions. So Kamali, you are up next.
So I just want to offer that, so Jessica is not bugging, as we used to say in my day. What you saw during the NES presentation did show, and I took notes, it was a 22% decline between 2010 and 2020, but then from 2020 to 2030, we would have a 20% increase. So just for the person that goes back and listens to this replay, that's why we're having this kind of discussion right now, is the information we provided gave us different facts that are making us then have to give pause to how, the information we're seeing tonight. We all understand and get how Excel and, algorithms work. So if you start with a bad foundation, then it's going to propagate through. We now, and I shared Jessica's concern, I want to ensure that since it's the same organization, now the information that's being provided is indeed accurate and something that we can use going forward. So that's just all I want to share. And then I'm looking forward to hear what Katora has to add in terms of details from any other committees, subcommittees.
Katura, you're up.
Okay, so I was just going to make a few comments. So, and these aren't in any particular order, but one of the things that I did try to ask about in can't remember which other meeting, because there've been a bunch of them, but this number for 2021-22, the 134 for kindergarten, does apparently include the families who decided to hold their kids from kindergarten because of the pandemic. So I think Jessica noted that it just seems a little high compared to the following year of 100 and then 112. And I think that is probably why, because it's taking into account that extra group of students who otherwise would have been in this year's class. The other thing I was going to say is that as far as Park Central goes, as Greg noted, NESDEC does not look at that type of project when making these predictions. And so that is an issue that in the schools planning, the capital planning schools research subcommittee, we have been talking about, and Kathy Cook has done some investigation into this. And it seems as though, and I think that, we would want to keep an eye on this and also maybe update these numbers or confirm them as things move forward. According to the investigation she's done, Park Central may add, if it happens, could add about 100 students across the K-8 spectrum, if that were to happen. So that's another thing that we are definitely keeping in mind when looking at this. And when I look at these projections, I, kind of build that in my head a little bit as a distinct possibility. That was my second point. And then, and I think the other thing is that these are just projections. Oh, I know. My third point was that, in looking at planning for schools, the intent, as far as I understand it, is not to look at, how much school space would we need to exactly accommodate this exact number of students, that there's always some amount of cushion there. I'm absolutely in agreement that we would not want the cushion to be too small. But at the same time, we can't plan for things that have no basis in reality for possibly happening unless they're already in the works. So it's, it's a tricky thing. It's definitely a tricky thing, but those are my thoughts as we're listening to the presentation and talking about these questions.
So if I could make a couple of comments, since it looks like we're going to be cycling through again. And by the way, Katura referenced Kathy Cook. For those of you that aren't aware, Kathy is the advisory chair. So 2 days ago, we had a capital budget subcommittee for the Southborough School Committee meeting. That's not the same committee that Katora is referencing, which is a different capital budget related to, the school facilities committee. And one of the things that we're all aware of is that student enrollment sizes are clearly connected to capital assets, because as class sizes and grade configurations change, it potentially has effect on capital assets, and as a result, capital planning. I had the same thought that Jess had when I heard the change, if you will, in the projections. And I think that in light of this new information, it seems clear to me that we need a programmatic review of projections for the Finn, Woodward, and NERI grade level configurations to determine what will best support student learning in the future. And one way to do that is to try to hire a consultant. But rather than having to expend funds on an outside third party, the superintendent mentioned to me that he felt the district staff could perform that work, and he was in fact willing to do it. It's not a quick project, this assessment, but the time frame we discussed was to have the results of this review presented to this committee in May. So that's 3 meetings from now. Now, before I ask the committee to comment on this, I just want to confirm, Greg, is it still your feeling that the district staff would be able and willing to do this work?
Yes.
All right. So what I would propose, and obviously there's some more comments that are going to come out. I don't think this is a vote, but I think that I think it would be a directive, to the superintendent to do this analysis, to have his team do this analysis. And I would make sure that before we issued that at least no one had any objection. No one on the committee had any objection to doing that. I will stop, and I'm going to go back and look at the hands up. Katora, it looks like, oh no, okay. So Jessica, you're back up next.
Okay, thanks. Can you just clarify? So what would the internal assessment be for? Could you say that again, Roger? It would be to assess our needs for what exactly?
Well, let me go ahead and restate what I would propose we put in this directive.
Okay.
That we get a programmatic review of projections for the Finn, Woodward, and NERI grade level configurations to determine what will best support student learning.
Okay.
Now, this is class size and grade level. Obviously, class size is part of that, class size and grade level configurations. Make sense?
Yeah, and this would be for general ed population and special ed population and English ELL like all of our learners?
This would be for all learners.
Okay. Okay. I mean, to me, that sounds good, but I was also going to ask, well, the reason I raised my hand was, don't we generally have 2 projections from 2 different places? I forget what the other one is.
So we have our October 1 enrollment projections, which comes directly from our student information database, which is PowerSchool. And then the second enrollment projection really is around NESDEC. So those are the 2 sources. So in reality, we really only have one projection tool, which is NESDEC at this point.
Okay. For some reason, I thought there was a second one. Is NESDEC the only source that does this?
I'm sure there are other organizations. I think NASDAQ is one of the most utilized organizations that conducts enrollment projections. I will share also that as part of, and this is part of the capital planning conversation too, that as part of the school committee's directive for the district to really look at a statement of interest for Neary School as part of the Mass School Building Authority's core building program. We have to look at the program at Neary and think about, what are the deficiencies, what are the areas we're trying to improve, and submit a statement of interest. And Director Lavoie and Kathleen Valente have been working on that. The first step in the MSBA process is getting invited in. And it's getting invited in initiates a whole another 280-day process, which then reviews enrollment projections. It reviews different scenarios. It looks at grade level configurations. It is a thorough analysis of pretty much every situation that could take place before MSBA would approve a project for the town to move forward with, to renovate a school or add on to a school or decommission a school. So my point is that these enrollment projections help us have conversations now as part of a larger building project. If the district gets invited in, would be a much more thorough analysis of enrollment as part of a larger scope of a feasibility study.
Okay, and when would that happen?
So the challenge is we don't know because, we would submit a statement of interest and then wait for the MSBA to review the statement and invite us in. The window has not yet opened, and we're anticipating potentially in the spring. But many districts, it takes a few years to be able to actually get invited into the initial process.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Kamali, looks like you're up next.
That the direction that Greg went in is where I was leading, which is that the average person that is looking at the enrollment projections is concerned about capital projects, expansions, improvements to the schools and the buildings. So at least now I see and I hear from Greg that he's thinking about those implications, and I'll just add that, I absolutely know in terms of looking at another consultant for this information. We just had a great new hire the other day, Mr. Laveau, that I think could definitely spearhead gathering this sort of information and pulling the metrics together. So I think that would be like our first point of contact to see how this is, how we propagate this out for the kindergartner and then 18 years plus past that, and how it's going to impact the district. So in terms of your suggestion, Roger, I'm in favor of that.
Okay. Jen, you're up next.
I just wanted to say I'm in favor of it too. I think we have a lot of questions that we can't really answer yet in terms of how projects and buildings and so forth get used and allocated. So I think this will be really helpful for us to start to make, to really look into those decisions. So I don't have a question. I just wanted to say I supported it.
All right, great. Thank you. So I think that, well, let me just double check. Does anyone object to this as a direction, or can we just presume that we're directing the superintendent to go ahead and perform this analysis, and looking for a report back? We understand this is going to take some time because it's a it's a comprehensive analysis here. But looking for a report back no later than the May meeting. So that's 3 meetings from now. Is that fair, everybody?
I think I'm the only one who didn't explicitly voice approval of this, but I think I just want to say that I think this is a great plan, and I appreciate Greg and everybody taking this on. This is a it's not a quick project, as you mentioned, Roger, and I think it will go a long way toward helping. So thank you.
So Roger, can I just make one last comment?
Please, or more than one.
Maybe it's not the last comment, but just a general statement around that. There's been a lot of conversations around, do we close this building? Do we move students, this grade level configuration? And I'm always mindful that we have outstanding schools. We have a great Finn school, a great Woodward school, a great Neary school, and a great Trotter school with a lot of pride. And when we have these conversations, we need to include the experts who are the educators in these decisions and these conversations around programs. And I just want to share with the community and our educators that these are preliminary conversations. These are at the very early stages. No decisions have been made, and we value their work, and they'll be included in these conversations and discussions. And we don't know where these will lead, but it will be a process, and we'll make sure we engage all the stakeholders.
All right, well, thank you. So we are moving on to the monthly general fund expenditure report for fiscal year 2021.
Sure, and I will turn it over to Becky Pellegrino, who will go over the expenditure report as well as provide an update on the COVID-19 related unanticipated expenses.
Good evening. As you review the FY21 monthly general fund report as of January 31st, 2021, you will note that there are no significant variances from December to January. As of January 31st, we had $265,027 or 1.25% remaining on the bottom line. At the same time last year, we had $514,402 or 2.47% remaining. Our OPM is submitting the final invoices for the Finn boiler project to the MSBA. So I do anticipate that the costs for this project that are included in the operational budget will be removed from it very shortly. Are there any questions on the monthly general fund report?
If there aren't, I think we need a vote to approve it, correct?
That's correct.
What is the, I'm not looking at, what is the date on the report?
It is January 31st, 2021.
So I would entertain a motion to approve the monthly general fund expenditure report dated January 21st, 2021 for the Southborough schools until audited.
So moved.
Moved by Katora. Is there a second?
I'll second, Jen.
Seconded by Jen. Is there any discussion? We need a roll call vote. Kamali?
Yes.
Jess?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Katura?
Yes.
I vote yes. It's unanimous. Get back to you, Becky.
Okay. I will share my screen. Can everyone see my screen now?
Yes.
I can.
Okay. So just wanted to provide the committee with an update on some of our grant funding. I have been speaking about the 3 grants that we had received earlier in the school year, and those are the CVRF School Reopening Grant, the ESSER grant, and then also the Remote Learning Technology Essentials Grant. But over the past month, we have also become the recipients, although we have to apply for our ESSER 2 money, of 2 other grant funds. The ESSER 2 is similar to the ESSER grant that we received earlier. However, you can see it is about 3 times more than what we had previously received, and that amount is $135,238. That grant is available to us until the end of fiscal year 2023. And I will note that 10,000 of that amount does have to be earmarked towards mental health programs or services for our students. The next fund that we received is our state coronavirus prevention fund. And that is a grant that we do not have to apply for. We will actually see the first payment for this grant this month. That is in the amount of $37,300. This fund was originally in the budget that came out of the House and the Senate Conference Committee. It was vetoed by the governor, and then both the House and the Senate did override the governor's veto. And this is $25 per student based on our foundation enrollment numbers, and then also an additional $75 for low-income students within the district. And that money does have to be used in fiscal year 21. So we are starting to see additional money coming in, and was actually on a call today with MASBO, and we're hearing that there may be more coming with this new stimulus package that's coming out of Washington, D.C. In terms of the expenses, we really are trending as to where we thought we would be in the categories that we had identified in the summer as those areas where we had the most concern. We are doing a great job with the teacher substitutes. The building-based substitutes have been, I think, a blessing to the schools and have really worked out well. And then the other area where we've really been able to see some real growth is in our technology. You'll notice that we've been able to use these grant funds to really supplement the technology to the students that are using the Chromebooks, and also in terms of some of our new applications that are being used for remote learning. And here is the Katora Martin school reopening grant update report. So you can see that we are really spending down the school reopening grant amount. As of January 31st, we had about $30,000 remaining. And I will say that we are very close. We have encumbered all of our transportation cleaning costs, as well as our cleaning costs in the buildings. And we do anticipate that this grant will be fully expended with the next payroll that will be happening next week, when we do add all of the substitutes and then also the nurse substitutes. So at that point in time, that's when we will switch our focus to the new grant money that will be coming and allocated to us. The preschool revolving account, we continue to see a slight profit of $8,000, which is shared by the 2 communities. And as you can see, that our tuition and our expenses are running on pace, where our tuition, we've received just about half of our tuition for the year, and that is about where we stand with our expenses as well. And then finally, with our food service program, January was the largest number of meals that have been served to date for this school year. And you can see that in total, we have served over 38,000 meals for this school year. We've also seen an uptick in our a la carte offerings and purchases. And as I had mentioned last month, we did receive a school meal program grant in the amount of $24.58. We are also hearing that there may be additional funding coming from the USDA for our school meals program. We have not heard what that amount might look like. At the state level, they're still trying to really sort through all of the grant money that is being pushed down to the states. So we hope to have more information on that at next month's meeting. So for the first time, I'm pleased to present the fact that we are actually running in the black, where we have a profit of $1,548 for our school lunch program. And so that really is a credit to the team in Southborough, to all the cafeteria managers, the cafeteria workers, and then also to Kyle Person and his hard work. And Keith, is there anything that you'd like to share for the food service program?
The only thing I would add is that the Monday pickup has certainly been very successful. Families have gotten into a groove. It is part of their routine. And like Greg announced during his last communication, we will be having school meal pickup on Monday, the 15th, for families to keep up with that consistent Monday trend. We are also looking forward to continuing that through, if it is the best thing to do, of moving to more in-person learning, keeping those Mondays for meal pickup as well. So the trend is there, like Becky explained, and certainly it's reflected in these numbers, but we're hoping to keep that consistency throughout the school year.
So if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
That is great about the food service numbers, you know, getting into the black. That's terrific.
Yes.
I see Katora with her hand up.
No, I was just going to say the same thing, more of a comment that when I was looking at the materials and I saw the preschool in the black and the lunch in the black, it's like kind of nice to see that things have gained some momentum over the year. So great job, everyone.
And a good trend.
Very good.
I'm going to knock on wood now.
Other questions?
I'll just comment that it's a lot of oversight in management from Becky and Keith, and really thinking outside of the box, and really pushing people to think about different ways to get food in the hands of our students and families is really a testament to their hard work as well.
Okay. Up next, are we moving?
So next on the agenda, we have the FY22 budget priorities and the FY22 budget calendar, which are embedded in the FY22 recommended budget presentation. So I will.
Greg, can I jump in for a second? Did
Sure.
you want to do capital planning before that budget priorities?
Sure, Roger. Did you want to? So in the packet is the capital plan that was voted in November. And Roger, I'm not sure if you want to say a few words around the overall plan, or did we speak to it during the enrollment conversation?
Well, I'm looking around to see if we're going to talk about the parking lots.
Yeah,
that's about it. That's the only thing I was thinking of.
Yeah, so I guess we are not planning to move any warrant articles forward on the town warrant article at this point in time. However, we are planning a capital project that will be funded out of revenues received from renting in Southborough Extended Day. And that project will focus on pavement repair at Finn School, I believe, Keith, is the school we're working on. And I think it's just important to point out that, you know, this has been an ongoing strategy of the district in partnership with the town, where we are using those rental fees of Southborough Extended Day, the rental central office, to fund some of these capital projects. And another example of capital project that was funded through these revenues is the Woodward driveway enhancement project that took place a little over a year ago.
And Greg, I would concur. Finn is the priority for that work, and we're going to be working closely with Karen Galligan, the superintendent of the DPW, to bring that project to fruition as soon as numbers become available.
And I think Clayton asked for a very special parking spot when the paving project moves forward. Is that true?
It is included in the painting specs, but it's a surprise, Greg. We're going to keep it quiet for now.
All right, well, thanks for that. I guess it's back to budget priorities now.
All right, so budget priorities and budget calendar are embedded in the FY22 recommended budget presentation. So I will share my screen. All right, so I'm pleased to share with the school committee and the community, the public schools of Southborough, FY22 recommended budget as of February 10th, 2021. And before I begin, I'll just share that this is a process that begins almost immediately after the fiscal year ends. So Becky Pellegrino and her finance team have been hard at work preparing all the budgets and the numbers and really helping move forward the process to get to this recommended budget. I'll also share that principals and directors have done a tremendous amount of work with their faculties and staffs around thinking about, what are our goals that we're trying to accomplish and how can we achieve those goals through the budget, through the dollars. So this is a little bit of an overview of the budget process, and it begins in September. And I'll just highlight one or two of the key events in each month. So the September, one of the key tasks is for the school committee to really review its budget priorities for the upcoming fiscal year. And last year, with the district spending time reauthorizing its strategic plan, Vision 2026, it was a great opportunity for the school committee to come together and think about what are the budget priorities for this upcoming year and how are those budget priorities aligned to the district's strategic goals. In October, I think some of the key work is really having conversations with our town administrator and town leaders around what is the context of our town economic landscape. And this is important because we are one department of many in a larger financial picture of the town. In November, it was approval of the capital plan and thinking about what are those capital projects that need to be attended to in the outward years. And that is a key process in preparing this budget. In December, we presented the preliminary budget. And then in January and February, which I'm having a very hard time thinking that it's February, we typically provide the school committee with a superintendent's recommended budget to vote. And that is where we are this evening. And then in terms of next steps, if this evening the school committee votes a budget, the next step would be to hold a public hearing. And then we are waiting for determination in terms of the town meeting date, which has been shifted, I believe, later in May. So I think it's important to begin the discussion around the FY22 recommended budget by reviewing where we left off. This table really speaks to the process that we used in last year, from the beginning of the process to the final appropriated budget by the town voters. And I guess the key row that I'd like you to focus in on is the second to the last row. The budget increase that we're hoping to move to town meeting was a 4.02% increase. And that was the school committee voted budget. And the budget driver of that budget was primarily out of district student placements that were quite significant. And then the pandemic hit, and then working with our town leaders, we went back and amended our budget to reflect a 2% increase. And this is what the townsfolks appropriated and voted moving forward for this fiscal year. So I think it's important to talk about where we're starting from, which is a 2% budget moving into the FY22 planning process. What were the impacts of amending our FY21 budget? So we had a reduction of 3.5 full-time equivalent employees. And then we had deferment of a number of purchases, which included textbooks, technology, general supplies, and library materials. So again, that frames where we started the budget process this fall. So we are a mission and vision driven organization. So it's not about the bottom line and how much money we're making. It is really about students and helping them grow and develop as future citizens. So our mission is quite simple. It's educate, inspire, and challenge all students. And then part of the reauthorization of the strategic plan was really thinking about what is our vision. And through the work of the central office leadership team and Stephanie Reinhorn, we really worked on what is our portrait of a graduate. What do we want students to know and be able to do when they leave 8th grade, moving to Algonquin, and when they graduate from Algonquin High School. So it was really clear. We want students to be collaborators, critical and creative thinkers, communicators, socially and civically engaged, growth-oriented, and healthy and balanced. So I spoke earlier about the school committee's budget priorities. So again, these were reauthorized by the school committee this year and reviewed. There are a number of budget priorities that were outlined, and these are essential in terms of our work as a district in terms of making decisions around what to fund or what not to fund. There's not unlimited funding, and we do have to make decisions, and these approved budget priorities really help us make good decisions moving forward. And I will not read each bullet. I'll let folks kind of take a look. And I'll just end on I believe the last bullet, which is recruit, maintain, and support high quality staff, and just speak to the fact that we are a people business, a people organization, and our strength and greatest asset are its people, our teachers, our students, our families. And really, I think this was a bullet that resonated with me because it's about expanding our instructional leadership, making sure that our students have the best teachers in front of them, and really providing increased opportunities for our teachers to engage in professional development, focus on teaching and learning, and having that just-in-time professional learning that's so essential to helping support our teachers. So in terms of our fiscal year 2022 budget variables, so we always begin the budget process doing a lot of projections and assumptions. So a couple of the variables really is the Chapter 70 funding and new legislation, the Student Opportunity Act. I spoke about that briefly in the legislative update, and specifically the Student Opportunity Act and its mechanism to reimburse districts for out-of-district transportation funding. So if you look at our out-of-district transportation account, it's almost equal to our regular ed transportation account, so it's significant. And we're hoping that the Student Opportunity Act will be implemented in year one, so we will see some funding back to the community for a reimbursement for transporting our students out of district. Out of district special education funding, so circuit breaker. So again, we don't find out these numbers for later in the year. It's always an unknown. And Becky and Marie Allen and her team monitor this closely. And that is always an unknown as we look at each fiscal year. The third is the COVID-19 fiscal year 2022 expenses. So we are hoping that we are in a good place to reopen in the fall and return back to 5 days of in-person learning. We're very confident that we will be able to do that. However, we are anticipating that we'll still need, there could still be some expenses such as PPE. We're not sure what the social distancing will look like still. So we put this as a potential budget variable that we're keeping a close eye on. And lastly, the town economic landscape. So the pandemic has really created a different economic climate from where we were of March last year. There's a lot of unknowns, and it has impacted the state economy and the local economy. And we're keeping a close eye and working closely with our town leaders to see what impact it's going to have on the school budget. So our budget drivers for fiscal year 22 are in 3 categories. Restoration of maintenance of buildings. So that is one line item we really reduced the result of having to get to a 2% budget. So this is a restoration of that account. Also, another budget driver is really expanding world language to grade 5. This was based on a recommendation from our world language study group. And then just cost of living, which is total $355,000. So the total budget drivers is $497,959. So our budget offsets. So we have our FY21 circuit breaker reimbursement offsets. So we do get reimbursed for our out of district special education student placements. We do have a number of students who require out of district placements based on their need because we can't meet their needs in district. And there is a funding mechanism that reimburses the district for part of those expenses. So we have a $1,066,136 offset. Then we have retirements and leaves of absences, which totals $82,036. And then Becky shared some of the grant funding that we're anticipating that we're able to expend in the FY22 fiscal year, and the ESSER and IDA grant funds, which is a total of $84,986. So the total budget offsets equals a little over $1.2 million. So what does the bottom line look like? So the FY22 recommended budget reflects a level services budget with growth and targeted areas. The recommended budget is a $21,734,434 budget, which reflects a $497,959 increase over fiscal year 21, which is a 2.34% increase. And we'll talk about the comparison to if the 4.02% in FY21 was appropriated, what the increase would have looked like. So in terms of the budget summary, so what are the growth areas that we're excited about in this budget? So really increasing instructional resources and professional learning, specifically looking at increasing some of the resources in history and social science curriculum, and also a renewal of some of our mathematics resources. And also, providing a variety of professional learning opportunities for our educators in the areas of teaching and learning, content instruction, and again, we feel like professional learning is an investment that returns dividends because it's something that really impacts what happens in our classrooms. So the other area we're excited about is instructional capacity to support teaching and learning. So the committees across the 3 districts have spent a lot of time really looking at the organizational chart at the district level and thinking about what type of organizational leadership team do we want to establish to make sure we're moving the work forward. Over the past year, we've really made a lot of moves in the area of operations and management. For example, really looking at Becky's roles and responsibilities of finance. She began her work last year with many areas of focus. So she's focused on finance, was focused on finance in 3 districts, transportation in 3 districts, food services in 3 districts, facilities in 3 districts. And we spent a lot of time talking about that's a lot for one person. So we segmented the responsibilities, and that's when we brought on Keith Lavoie as Director of Operations, and it's really served us well. I think it would have served us well in a normal year, but it's truly served us well in a pandemic. We've been able to really have the focus on some of the areas we just wouldn't have had the capacity. A long story to provide a short answer, which is, now we're thinking about the teaching and learning side. So we feel like we have a good structure of operations and management. We want to really look at teaching and learning and how we're supporting our principals and our teachers in those areas. So our assistant superintendent, Stephanie Reinhorn, does amazing work and very talented, but similar to Becky's challenges, Stephanie has many curriculum areas and focus areas that the scope of her work is demanding and very broad. So part of the conversation is how can we develop a teaching and learning team that Stephanie can begin to lead and support principals around. So our recommendation, and which is embedded in this budget, is to add a 0.5 Director of English Language Arts, a 0.5 Director of Mathematics, and a 0.3 Director of Social Emotional Learning. And the Director of ELA and Mathematics would be shared with Northborough. So it'd be 0.5 in Southborough, 0.5 in Northborough. And the Director of Social Emotional Learning would be a 0.3 in Southborough, 0.3 at the region, and 0.4 in Northborough. And those positions really will help us build a content expertise and coherence and horizontal and vertical alignment in terms of our curriculum, and really start to build out a team for teaching and learning that Stephanie will lead. This doesn't remove the need for our distributed leadership model. We still have layers of teacher leaders and content leaders at the teacher level that are still an instrumental part of the work we do as a district. The next area is expanding the world language program to grade 5. So a few years ago, under Kathleen Valenti's leadership, we did a world language study, and there were some specific recommendations that came out of that world language study group. And one of the key recommendations was to expand world language into our elementary program. So this budget actually adds a world language educator in grade 5 to begin that journey as a district, really providing language instruction to our elementary students. The next line item is timely. Rhoda Webb gave an excellent presentation about our English learners in the program that we offer. And part of the work that we do as a district is making sure that families have access to information. And part of that work that Rhoda does is really working with families and making sure that families are receiving information and it allows them to access the information. And that is through translation, interpretation. So it is an increase in the budget. And lastly, it's human resources, an area that Heather Richards and our team have brought to the table, which is currently the way we manage substitutes in our building is using people power. And we're really looking to deploy some software to use less people power and be able to focus their time and energy on other important areas of work and let some of the software do some of the work for us. So this is an idea and a concept that Heather has brought to this budget. So the continued conversations that we're having, not all progress requires a dollar attached to it. So we're continuing to have conversations around student level supports. So what are those interventions that we can provide for students who might need academic interventions, who need to accelerate their learning? So maybe they need experiences accelerating in a content area, or conversely, maybe a student is struggling with a particular concept in mathematics and needs an intervention to get over that learning and move on to the next level. So that's a conversation we're having. And also the music study group, which was led by Rhoda Webb, really looking at some of the recommendations of the music study group and what that means for our music program in Southborough. So in summary, this table is a summary of the FY22 budget process. And part of the work we do as a district is really looking at, okay, what if money were not an obstacle and was not something we need to be concerned about? What would we want to include in our budget? So the initial budget request came in at 8.15% increase, and included some positions like teen chair positions and health educators. We knew that was not within kind of the framework that the town provided us. So with the work of principals and district leaders, we were able to reduce that budget. And we reduced that to a 3.94% budget, which is what we presented in December. And again, having better data and better numbers, we were able to reduce the budget to a 3.13% budget, which was presented last month. And then again, through the work of Becky's team and in collaboration with principals and directors, we were able to bring the budget this evening to a 2.34% increase over fiscal year 21. And this is a historical comparison of the percent increases year after year. And this 4.02% increase was the FY21 budget that the school committee voted, and then we amended to a 2%. So if we compare this 2.34% budget over the 2%, so it's a marginal increase. But if we were to compare it to our 4.02%, it would reflect a 0.35% increase over the 4.02. But we know that every town department could do this comparison because every town department had to go back and amend their budgets. But I think it's a good comparison to take a look at. So with that said, I will end the presentation and turn it back over to the committee and for any questions and comments.
What I would like to do, the committee willing, is I would like to ask for the budget motion to be put on the floor and seconded, and then we'll debate or open that up for discussion. So what I'd like to request is a motion to approve the Southborough Schools fiscal year 2022 budget at $21,734,434, which is an increase of 2.34%. There's a lot of 34s in this, but I would entertain that. I'd like to entertain that motion if someone would put that on the floor.
This is Kamali. I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second, Jen.
So moved by Kamali, seconded by Jen. We are open for discussion on this budget item. And I see Katora had her hand up first.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for that presentation. I had wanted to go to the operational budget subcommittee meeting and I couldn't make it. So you probably talked about this then, but in the presentation, the first time the 497 is mentioned, there's building maintenance of 80,000, world language expansion of I think 60 something, and then the rest was COLA. which I believe is our contractually obligated COLA. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay. And then in growth areas, there were a bunch of other things listed, but the total is still the 497. And so are the growth areas a result of shifting things around, or am I misunderstanding the numbers? I just
That is,
trying to like
that is
figure
ac-
out how it fits together.
that is accurate. We shifting resources and rethinking, and some retirements, and then using, not, a person might retire at $100,000 salary, and then the position that we're filling is 60,000. So you have this $40,000 net gain that you can add to other areas without increasing the overall budget.
Okay, gotcha. All right, thank you very much. Thank you. Looks great. Thank you.
Becky, did you want to add anything?
No, that was exactly what I was going to say. It was looking at some of our line items and seeing where we were able to achieve some savings and being able to redistribute those funds.
Actually, I'll just make one more comment, which is that if we had this, I know sometimes you put it in a pie chart format. And so if we had it in pie chart, I mean, the vast majority of this, as usual, is obligated increase. And then there's a modest slice for other things that really, I mean, building maintenance is hard to argue with too. So anyway, all right, thank you.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would, I see Kamali's hand up next. I would just mention or kind of confirm Katora's statement. We had a budget subcommittee meeting last week, and Kamali was one of the folks in attendance with that. And we actually reviewed this and ended up, recommending that it be moved forward to the full committee. Kamali?
That's true, Roger. And I, as part of the budget subcommittee, was very vocal in addressing any open questions and kind of drilling down into the numbers. And I also wanted to understand how flexible is this budget? So I'll share with you what I learned. Just seeing that these three positions that Greg described, the pre-K through 8 director of ELA for world languages, the director for math, the director for the social and emotional learning. I think the approach of splitting those resources across North and Southborough, as well as regional for the social emotional learning, makes great sense. And it's very, it's roles that are impacted financially in the budget this year, but they're long lasting. And, I did want to understand, how does this affect the teachers and the and I understand that better, in that, having these leadership roles actually enables the teachers to teach, and not or the assistant superintendent to assistant superintendent, not do segment themselves out into all these other miscellaneous places. So that's why I learned that, and I wanted to share that with everyone. And also, in looking at our budget, where we put our money also reflects what we think is important. And I think Greg led very strongly in sharing that, the mission, and this is mission and vision driven. It's about the students and their ability to learn. And I wanted to make sure that when we have recommendations from groups like the World Language Group, the Music Study Group, the Coalition on Equity Group, and if those recommendations come with a cost, but the impact is needed now and not, 5 years from now, there is going to be room for implementation of those things. And they did explain that that is possible. So that was another key learning for me as well, that I wanted to share with everyone, because, it's, if we approve a budget, I don't want to hear that we have a great recommendation on something that's going to improve DEI. It's going to improve the kids' ability to learn with the language program or music, and we say, no, we can't do it because it's not in the budget. There's room that we can decide, is this something that we can leverage from elsewhere? And I guess that's for anyone that had a question about why world language is only, shouldn't say only, but that it's impacting down to 5th grade and not younger grades. The idea is that we start with the 5th grade and then continually progress downward, as has been proposed in the recommendation from the World Study Group. So I just wanted to add that because someone, may wanted to know that, have that clarification. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you. Other questions? All right. Seeing none, this is a roll call vote. Kamali?
Yes.
Katura?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
I vote yes. So the budget is approved unanimously. Okay. Greg, any more comments on that, or shall we continue? Shall I continue down the agenda?
Could I just make one suggestion? That I know the principals love policy. It's one of their favorite topics, but I know they would love to, if it's the will of the committee, to let them miss this policy on this meeting so they can go and begin their evenings.
I don't see any objections. And looking at the agenda, the educational policy, we don't have any at this time, so it seems very appropriate to agree with that. Although I understand we have more issues on policy development, distribution items.
All right, so thank you, principals.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you. Have a
Good
nice
night and thank you. Yeah, good night and thank you.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you. Take care.
So I think I'm correct, right, Greg? There's no educational policy, none at this time for this meeting.
That is correct.
And we've got in the packet, looks like we don't have anything to vote. It looks like we have, there are 4 policy first readings, and there are 10 policies to be distributed.
Correct. Roger, could I just highlight a new way we're trying to communicate policies? This has been in the works for probably 5 or 6 months, but the pandemic has slowed us down. So I'd love to just spend a minute and show the school committee as well as the community how to access the policies that are under review and provide feedback and input.
Please.
Just give me 1 second. All right, so on our website now, we have our mission, upcoming events, and then we have this new buttons called School Committee Policy Development. And this work was done by Nancy Bissett and Cheryl Lepre and Galen Hammond. So when you click on the policy development, it shows the policies that are under review for Northborough, under review for the regional, and we're going to add the Southborough policies. So you can click on a policy, you can see the policy that's being reviewed, And then there's a form for community members to provide input and feedback around the policy. And then this information will go back to the policy subcommittee. So this was, we actually launched this, I believe, this week and are finalizing it, and will be highlighted in upcoming communication to the community.
That's great. That really is great. Questions on that?
No, that's great. We've been talking about that for a while, so that's awesome to see.
Way
Yeah.
to get, way to get community feedback in, into our policy development process.
Yeah,
And-
I agree. That's great.
Yeah, and it's just transparent. It makes them very accessible. So I think that's great.
Yeah, please pass along our thanks to Nancy and Cheryl. That's great that they did that.
All right. So we'll move to personnel items.
So in your packet is the personnel report, and there are a number of appointments and one retirement. We have a cook at Trotter Middle School who is retiring effective June 30th. So I know she's very excited about that. Are there any comments about the personnel report?
None at this time. Thank you.
So, news from the town moderator, as far as the current status of the town meeting.
Just an update from the town moderator. Roger, I don't think a specific date has been set yet. Is that accurate?
I am not aware that any date has been set. I'm just aware that the communication is town meeting has been delayed. So,
And
I don't know when the date will be set, or at least, well, I should say, I haven't heard when the date will be set.
I'm just hoping we have as nice weather that we had this past spring when we had the outdoor town meeting.
Yeah, I agree.
And the dragonflies were a nice addition too.
Really. All right. So we have action on minutes for at least the open meeting minutes of January 13th, 2021. That's in your packets. I would entertain a motion to approve the Southborough School Committee open meeting minutes of January 13th, 2021. If I could get that motion on the floor and seconded, then we can find it if anybody has any issues with that.
I'll make that motion. So moved.
Moved by Katura,
This is Kamali. I'll second that.
seconded by Kamali. Does anyone have any suggested changes or amendments to those minutes?
No.
Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Jessica,
Yes.
Kamali,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Katura,
Yes.
I vote yes. Those minutes are approved unanimously. Okay. I think we have now gotten to agenda items for next month. Would anyone like to propose any that we can put on the agenda? Just remember, Katura, you're on the agenda for next month.
I'm on the agenda every month.
Right. All right. Well, clearly, if there's information that comes along in the next several weeks, just please send me an email or communicate with me in some fashion. I'll get together with Greg, regarding the agenda. I guess we are through to audience sharing. I'm looking out there. Would anyone like to share in our audience? I do not see any. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Before Roger, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Kamali.
This goes back to Greg and Mary Ellen for the joint meeting tomorrow. Could you come with some of the information, or prepared with some of the information that was shared by the in the medical advisory team overview, meeting that was given a week or so ago? And the other thing is, that's, I just wanted you to bring that, and not the whole thing, but a few key points that some of the audience and attendees would be keen to catch if they didn't catch the first one.
Molly, we expanded it to 200 slides. So we had 75, now it's 200.
Okay.
Our intention is to, the medical advisory team, we're modifying some of the key data. We'll talk about some of the key timelines, and also present some of the data that we received from parents around shifting of learning models. And then we'll be happy to answer questions and then go from there.
Okay, thank you.
Greg, I thought you mentioned to me we're going to limit it to 150 slides unless one of our members actually reminded us to bring the information tomorrow. So now it's 200. All right.
We have to keep our medical advisory team on our good side.
Sure.
Anything else? Okay. I don't know if anyone actually moved to adjourn yet. I missed it. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Moved by Katora. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Kamali. No discussion on this. Roll call vote. Katura,
Yes.
Kamali,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So that's unanimous. And it is 9:04 p.m. Thank you so much, everyone. And I
Thank
guess
you.
we'll see you tomorrow night.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Well,
Bye-bye.
we said